Hi, and welcome back to the European VC, your podcast for insights into the European VC industry. If you love our show, do drop us a review, share it with your friends, and join our Slack community at theeuropeanvc.com/community. Today, we're happy to welcome you to Radu and Andrei, founders of SeedBlink, one of Europe's upcoming platforms enabling investors to easily syndicate and participate in deals. Radu has 30-year-long experience founding and developing companies and have exited to companies like Microsoft, Naspers and Fitbit. Andrei comes from 20 years in banking, but with the insights and ambition to build new experiences and solutions for the financial world. And what better place to do that than by democratizing access to VC? Want to be on top of who the best up-and-coming emerging VCs in Europe are, and maybe even invest with them? Register for our newsletter at theemergingvc.substack.com and be the first to get in the know.
Radu and Andrei, welcome to the show. It's great having you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. Amazing times to be around.
Good morning from Bucharest. Thank you for having us.
Guys, before we dive into everything, I just want to hear your background and your story and what really got you to found SeedBlink.
I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I'm excited to start new ventures all the time. So I started 37 companies as a founder or co-founder in my life. 6 amazing successes, companies sold to Microsoft, Francisco Partners, and so on. 10 companies that we didn't really lose all the money, and all the rest kind of amazing experiences. Of course, I've started investing myself and tried to raise a fund, failed VC, I can say. Then I, together with Andrei, Ionuț, and Carmen, all the co-founders, I realized that actually it's not VC what I want to do, but this amazing venture, which is SeedBlink.
Jump into my history. I used to be a banker for 20 years. I just considered that for the second part of my life, I should do something totally different. And the tech sector is not covered by the bankers, not only here in the region, but elsewhere. Along with another banker, Ionuț, we decided first to make a sort of digital accelerator for the tech entrepreneurs here in the area. And we discovered they don't have enough funding sources, especially in the early stages or seed rounds. And we looked around in the more developed ecosystem, and we discovered the equity crowdfunding. It's a tool that became more and more popular, but we decided to adapt it to the habits and to the framework that we have here in the region. And we made a sort of, let's say, micro angel investing platform. And then we joined the forces with Radu and Carmen, and we developed day by day a different and more developed concept.
I actually want to ask a follow-up question to Radu on that front, because you said you started VC, you failed. Many of us have been through that, through that terrible and long, excruciating journey. Many of us are crazy enough to keep on trying, but you've also said something that I'm quite curious, which is, and I've realized that actually what I really want to do isn't exactly that. It's what we're doing at SeedBlink. So I actually want to deep dive on that. Guide us through that thought process. What led you to that realization, and why is this and not a venture fund?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very interesting journey in my head in itself. Look, as I said, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm very involved, emotionally and energetically and everything in developing a company and having customers and everything. Like a VC is a completely different animal. It's more discussing with LPs, and discussing with LPs it's a way slower process. I'm a very energetic person. I'm somebody that needs to do things and to see results like really quick. As I told you, I started 37 companies. I'm very quick to plug off, things that don't work, to understand that they don't work and move on. A VC is kind of a really slow animal. It's a slow process. It's very interesting, very exciting, and I'm really excited that I learned this process and how it works and everything. But it's a slow pace kind of a thing. You invest in 2-3 companies a year as a partner in a fund. Maybe the fund would invest in more, but it's a slow process, and you are not actually involved. It's very much ties and suit. Speaking with LPs. very much reporting in that kind of bureaucratic way. I just realized it's not for me. I want to be part of something that's way more entrepreneurial and hands on, and something that can actually change the world. So that's part of it. That's the personal part of it. On the vision part, I'm a strong believer that the VCs as we know them today are going to change. The VC model is going to get changed. While a VC is at least a 10, 12 years kind of a commitment, I don't want to get involved in a business that I know that's going to get changed and to get involved for the next 12 to 15 years, right? So basically, I'd rather be ahead of the wave and be part of the change and drive the change rather than hop on something that is going to be changed, right? And commit my look. I'm 54 years old. Committing my next 15 years of my professional career to something that is going to get changed. It sounds when you say it like this, it's already sounds kind of stupid, right? So I'm very happy that it failed, and I actually not consider it a failure, but an excellent opportunity to do the right thing.
I'd love to dive a bit deeper on exactly what is it you see VC changing into?
If I know exactly the answer to this, I'd be in a much better position.
You'd be racing for that fund.
Exactly.
Yeah, for that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we do believe that things are changing. And look, Sequoia has their own view on this, and they're doing their own kind of evergreen, whatever it is. Then LTSC, the new stock exchange, from San Francisco, have their own view on things. Then companies like Robinhood and eToro kind of come from a different perspective and change this. I think VCs, at least VCs in Europe, but also the ones in the US, are way too stagnant, way too big and slow animals. They need to be more distributed, more democratic, if I may use this word, and more dynamic.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing that when you're saying it like this, just because we have a bunch of VCs listening in, and I don't want to create animosity where it shouldn't be. So I just want to double down on, because my guess is it's not a critique of VCs as individuals and as investors, it's a critique of the model.
And it's not even a critique of the model. I think that the model was amazingly changing the world some 25, 30 years ago and since. And I think the model is still the main driver for great companies, for high growth companies, and it's super cool. I think the only thing I'm saying is that let's try. Maybe we can do things slightly different, slightly better. Maybe next to VCs, there can be some other things. So, yeah, absolutely. Even SeedBlink is working together with VCs. Even SeedBlink is actually considering helping VCs to raise their own money, as well as creating its own funds to go further and invest as a VC, right? With VC money. Because, VC has really good things which are towards, very clear thesis, quick to pull the trigger if there's a great company. And there are so many great things in VCs and so many good people. And I have so many friends in the VC world.
We've been dancing a bit around it. Let's make sure that we just have every listener understanding exactly what SeedBlink is. And I think that in this relation, it might be worth drawing in AngelList and Vauban and Odin and contrasting you to them, because that's of course on the front of helping angels mostly, and then you have on the other end the crowdfunding platforms like Seeders and Crowdcube and so on. And where do you fit in this spectrum, just to make sure that we have some yardsticks that everyone understand?
That's a very interesting question. And to be honest, we are still trying to find our way around, and we're very dynamic on searching our own who we are. We look at the environment and recognize that on technology, so we are pure technological, so that's one thing, right? And we are pure European. So in an environment where everything for the last 30 years grew global and we're supposed to be a global earth and everybody be friends and everybody work together, we realized that politically it's not that anymore. And, the China, the Russia, the transatlantic kind of region changed the internet and the technology from a global internet into a lot of regional internets and technologies. And there's a China internet, the Russian internet, and suddenly Europe realized in the last 10, 15 years that they rely too much on the US technology. And there are no unicorns, and there's no pure, other than SAP, speaking 5 years ago, there is no European technology. And the European Union started to push a lot into European technology to happen. And there were a lot of seed money thrown in by EU, German funds and so on, and a lot of push into growing the pure European technology. And I think that's a great thesis, and we believe in this. We're trying to help the European tech environment to build and create amazing unicorn, decacorn companies. So we want to be an essential part of this process. And that means that we are putting together the angels with their money, their knowledge, their abilities, and their willingness to participate, to help startups in so many ways. And we do work with very knowledgeable angels. We put together on a second part entrepreneurs and young companies and not so young companies, great companies that want to change the world, that want to change the European environment and need whatever the others can provide. As a third pillar, we put together, the VC money and knowledge, right? So we believe that the environment completely is not only VC and startups, it's VC angels and startups. So we're training angels to invest as VCs, so offering them, VC grade tools for investment, for negotiation, to help companies, and giving investors so much help around.
Ambassadors, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. The main words are full environment European tech.
We are in the stage of our journey that, as Radu mentioned, we are also play a role of education or helping with educating both the startups and the investors. And right now, of course, we have started from Romania. Now we have strong links to the Balkans and Southeastern Europe. And it seems to be we are making a sort of pioneering in this part of Europe, because not even the investors or the angels were used to syndicate between themselves. All the startups to become, of course, at a small extent, sort of public companies from the very early stage status. And so we are trying to help the both pillars of our ecosystem with making the things work together.
We should definitely come back to that topic of educating the ecosystem, because it's something we ourselves are also quite passionate about to some extent. But I'm actually curious, Andrei, to ask you something, because you said when you introduced yourself and you briefly talked about SeedBlink in the beginning of this interview, you said how it started. And now we just heard Radu saying how it is today. And it's quite a big difference, right?
In 2 years.
Yeah, in 2 years, exactly. And as one of the founders of SeedBlink, you were there on the first day and you really saw this evolution. I'd love to hear just a bit of that story of that thought process. How was that process of taking SeedBlink from what it was as a concept 2 years ago to where it is today? And I'm sure it will continue to evolve a lot, but I'm just curious for the story so far.
Going back to our history, actually we started with a different company that was called Human Finance. It was the digital accelerator I was talking about. And in that journey, we as former bankers have discovered this lack of both education, but also lack of funding sources. And then we made the spin-off in SeedBlink, and then Radu and Carmen joined. We have first started with syndication between different, actually here with Tech Angels Romania, with 26 people. It was our first MVP exercise. And then we started our first public campaign. That was back in December 2019. And it went much better than expected, being the first. It was a partnership with Sparking Capital, actually. Step by step, we developed the concept because we adapted our operational model, not having clear legislation here about crowd investing and syndicating between angels. And the operational model we have built is quite complicated because we are registering a new SPV for each campaign, each startup, but it comes with the need of the startup. They are not able to handle 100 or 200, 300 investors in their cap table. That's why we have imposed a minimum ticket of 2,500 euro per investment. That proved to be, and still it is at this moment, in place as compared to other platforms. We made this kind of comparison, and there are two different approaches. The ones that are more, let's say, going to the elite kind of investors, and they have minimum ticket of 10,000 euro, and they are the crowd, the real crowd, or the popular platforms with minimum tickets of 10 euro. And we feel that we are in a good position because with this 2,500, to us, the investors that came, the early adopters and then the followers, were people that are more, let's say, aware about the risk of investing in startups. And we democratize their access to this kind of investment. And then they learned by doing. And they started by investing one minimum ticket, and we have quite a few investors that exceeded to more for 100,000 euro invested through us. So it was a learning process. They became more picky. Actually, what we liked a lot to this journey, and we made this happen, we helped to build portfolios, which is actually one of our main, let's say, education tools for the investors, to have a broad exposure and diversification in their portfolio. That is really happening with our long-lasting investors, and we are very glad that we help them with this kind of approach and education.
I think that this is a point that we should just reiterate because, as I tried to describe before, right, we have the crowdfunding platforms on one side where it's a lot of money from a lot of people that don't know much and won't ever be involved with the startup. And then you have AngelList where you're getting closer to something that's only for angels. And then where I have you guys pegged, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're actually somewhere towards the angels, but you aren't requiring that you are a super sophisticated investor that can put down a lot of money in every deal. What's then interesting is that the way you present the startups on your platform is actually the same way as a crowdfunding platform would do. And I think that that's interesting because many of the syndication platforms or the people working on syndication platforms, they haven't developed that part as much as you guys have. And that's of course because you guys come from more of a crowdsourcing background when you started building what you're building. So I think that that's an interesting combination, that you are focusing on angels, but still you're presenting the startups in a way that is just as good as any crowdfunding platform out there. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate what you are saying. And yeah, you're exactly right. So we are right there in between, and we're trying, as we're saying, we're trying to figure out our exact spot. One interesting thing is that we're positioning ourselves as the best co-investor for VCs, right? We're developing our VC network of friends as much as possible. And we're going to VCs and saying, look, guys, we're not a competitor. We're actually your best positioned ally whenever you are investing. And that's where, good companies are coming to us through our VC network.
That's also interesting. That is your sourcing model, basically. If I'm not wrong, you also have the requirement that you don't get on the platform unless you have a VC leading the investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very easy to follow whatever term sheets are being signed by and negotiated by the lead VC. The only thing that we're not allowed to write off our terms is the follow-on ability, right? The fact that our investors are allowed to follow on. And that's something very interesting because we're trying to give our investors, the tools that make VCs successful. Now, one of the tools that, the angels don't necessarily understand, the younger angels or the less experienced angels, they don't really understand that the way VCs make money is through two things. One is through portfolio and statistics, and second is through follow-ons. Because at the end of the day, follow-ons are way de-riskified, if I may say so. Basically, you double down on companies that you actually know that it's worth it. Now, the problem is that with the companies that you know that it's worth it, nobody is going to allow you to get in there because, everybody knows that they're good companies. Angels will never be able to negotiate these kind of terms, right? And what we're doing, we're negotiating upfront these kind of tools for them. And we actually had quite a few follow-ons right now where companies and VCs that are following are coming to us and say, hey, is it possible that you don't invest in the follow-on and everything? And we're saying, look, no, we put that clause, last year there. Not for the fun of it, right? People were actually very, very happy, and investors were very happy to invest in companies that proved to be good.
I'm curious to hear how that works exactly, because when you secure that pro rata right, is that then secured for the syndicate? And then there's a rule governing the syndicate that says that if you put in 10% of the money, then you have the right to 10% of the follow-on chip.
Yeah, so basically it's a prorata in the prorata, and that's the starting point. And what we do is very interesting, is that what the company has the prorata right to invest, let's say, $1 million in the follow-on, right? So we go to our investors with the tool where we say, tell us what you want to do. You want to buy, you want to sell, or you want to do nothing?
Yeah.
In an ideal world.
Yeah.
And then we take all this information, and some people, for whatever reasons, they want to sell, because they have other opportunities or whatever. And here's their opportunity for the secondary, for the exit. Some people want to buy more than their prorata, and some people want just to hold, right? So we're doing all this math capped by whatever prorata follow-on that we have, and everybody's happy. Everybody's actually really happy.
Yeah, so you actually have a bit of an auction going inside the syndicate.
It's not auction because we do have the price being fixed by the round.
What about the secondaries? They can't sell it to other parties inside the syndicate at a premium or a discount.
The price is set.
Yeah.
The price is set, and we prioritize the secondary market. Yeah. And then whatever is left, we're going into follow. That's the interesting part, that the price is set.
Yeah.
Because you actually know, because of the follow-on, the price of the round.
Yeah.
If there is more demand between the existing shareholder in the SPV, then it's a pro rata allocation between them at the set price.
That's an interesting model, and that means that one party in the SPV can't go out and sell their share to the VC that would be interested in buying it.
Or to their colleagues in the SPV.
But they can't go outside of the SPV,
no.
I guess. Yeah.
Right now, no.
Makes sense. It could lead to some interesting conversations inside the syndicate.
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting model. It's something that's also why we're bringing you guys on, right? You're doing it differently from most. I'm curious to hear, just get some volume data. How many deals are you completing? How quickly are you completing them? Where are you? You're born out of Romania, but where are your investments happening? So on. Could you give us a rundown there?
In 2 years, we just issued our last year report, annual report. Make it also available to you. It's fresh. It's since last night. In 2 years, of course, the first year was the beginning, and last year it was with more and more engines working. We raised 38 million euro for 60 startups. I think right now already more than 15% of these startups or 10% are from abroad. Of course, also from the Romanian startups, a part of them, a significant part, are with founders, Romanian founders, but located outside Romania. Out of the 38 million raised, roughly 40% are coming from our investors, community of investors, and the difference is from the lead investors, from the VC lead investors. And right now we have a community of more than 9,000 investors with an account with SeedBlink. More than half of the active investors have invested more than 2 tickets. So as I told you, first you just try it with one, and then you start to get on the learning curve and diversify and so on. We have also a maximum limit, not only a minimum ticket, also a maximum ticket for the investors, in order not to have someone that is making the rules in the SPV. So normally we have 15 to maximum 20% of the amount raised is limited to one shareholder.
We do have a completely separate division for the family offices and for the big money. So whoever wants to put more than this 20% in the SPV, then it gets into a different division of SeedBlink. And it actually, we get a family office investing, $500,000 or 200,000 or whatever, directly in the cap table of the startup. And we do have this model where the startup understands that we're getting an SPV for the crowd, but then whenever we're bringing serious money to them, they're going to get into straight in the cap table. And that's how we keep all the interest in the community, as I was saying, the angels, the VCs or family offices or whatever you want to name it, and the company.
Of course, we started from Romania. Now we are in process to have a footprint in Bulgaria, Greece. Next month we are going to Czech Republic, Hungary, probably Serbia. So we want to develop on the local basis this ecosystem. Actually, what is also, I think is different to SeedBlink is that there is no active platform in the region as we are trying to put on the table or to show to the investors these kind of startups that are coming from Southeastern Europe. There are a few, but very few that are present on different platforms in UK, maybe some in US, but not as a group. They are just singular cases. So that's interesting because from Southeastern Europe, it seems more and more valuable and potential unicorn startups have been raised. And once there is more interest and focus on this region, the kindergarten and following the big and successful startups will more and more will raise from this region.
That's super interesting. Just before we go to the quickfire round, I think that we should just hear from you guys. Where are you headed? What will SeedBlink be in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Both geographic stage, but also number of deals and business model and so on.
That's a very interesting question. So we're actively trying to consolidate on European market. We're actively looking around to M&A activity on one hand to get the full Europe as well as greenfields in a few countries, as Andrei was saying. So in a few years, we want to be fully European, continue to stay tech, and also to be able to expand the ecosystem, not only in the startups, but as well as in the growth and maturity kind of stages of the company. So we want to really be a complete solution for equity financing for tech European companies.
This is between us.
Us and our listeners.
Us and all our listeners.
Yeah, we just discussed it's a work in progress to raise some funds that are part of this, let's say, one-stop shop concept that Radu was explaining. One of the funds will be dedicated to the follow-on rounds of our portfolio. One will be underwriting, will be a sort of underwriting fund, but they will be part of our ecosystem, not classical funds. So we are now setting up the framework for how they will work. On the other side, we are preparing also a trustee model for investing that is dedicated to investors from Western Europe. They are more familiar with this concept. They are investing through big platforms in this model. So right now we are working, and probably in 2 or 3 months we'll be ready with such a concept in a specific legislation.
Very exciting. Keep us posted. So we're running out of time. So as Andreas said, we always end the episodes with a quick fire round. These are quick answer questions. We try to keep them at 30 to 60 seconds each. Are you guys ready?
Ready.
Of course. First question, and I'm going to direct this one to Andrei first, and then Radu, please also give your comment after. And the first question is, in VC, in venture, generally speaking, what excites you the most that other people don't really feel that excited about? Andrei?
In VC or in the ecosystem in working with tech startups, I think the most exciting one is the innovation and opportunity to work with so many interesting and disruptive people that are thinking out of the box. So that's for me.
Yeah, and for me, the ability to change the world. I mean, yeah.
That's a nice nice way. Second question, and Radu, let's start on your side here. And I think it's interesting based on how we started this this interview and the story you shared. What would be your 3 top tips for emerging VCs who are fundraising their first fund?
That's a very complicated thing. So the first one and the biggest one is go to school, go back to school. VC is not something that you can wing it as entrepreneurship is normally. Need to go to school and really understand how things work in this new business if you haven't been a VC. Second, that is I think that there is a little bit of apprenticeship. You cannot be an entrepreneur and then just be a partner in a VC, create your own VC. Need to be around and see how things work. I guess these are the main 2 things.
Andrei, anything you'd like to add to that?
I've seen VC partners that are just showing their superiority to the startups. I would recommend to be more on the same ground and to work together to make it happen.
What's the most counterintuitive thing you've learned since you started SeedBlink?
Because I'm coming from banking sector and from big corporation way of doing things, I think the courage is the most important thing for the entrepreneurship, and we ourselves are now entrepreneurs, and in order to move things, you have to play this role of forward-thinking and to have courage and consistency to make it happen.
All the investors are great, and we appreciate and we believe that the investors are great and smart and everything. Having said this, what I've learned about our angels, our investors, was above and beyond everything that I would have thought. They're so clever people. They're so involved and willing to help the companies. I was completely puzzled and amazed by the quality of our angels and investors. I mean, how well they can understand companies, are willing to help the companies, can help the companies. So that's what actually shocked me.
Super cool. Radu, Andrei, thanks a million for joining us today. We are so happy to be shedding light on SeedBlink and the way that you're changing the ecosystem coming out of Romania. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the European VC, your podcast for insights into the European VC industry. If you love our show, do drop us a review, share it with your friends, and join our Slack community at theeuropeanvc.com/community. And don't forget, if you would like to suggest topics or guests for future episodes, join our community and help make the best pod for everything European VC. And if you are about to raise a fund or an international round, do let us know and we'll be happy to introduce you to relevant investors.